Well, I just filmed a whole intro without the audio recording, so now for round two. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and I work in politics. It's been a minute since I've gotten to talk to you guys. I was moving, but that process is finally over. A few more updates. I finally redid my hair. We're back to the bright lava girl energy pink, which is great. I feel the time for just a fresh start with the content on this channel. So what we're going to talk about today is something that I've been talking to a lot of people in the political space about for a while, which is what it's really like to work on presidential campaigns. I've worked in politics for like 5 years now in different ways, and before I had done one, I still had no idea what working on a presidential campaign was actually like. The only references I had were from TV shows and movies, and I couldn't picture it. I heard horror stories, I heard people saying that it was the best thing they'd ever done in their lives, and I was just really confused. So I'm here to tell you what it's actually like on presidential campaigns. Obviously, before I start, every presidential campaign and every state campaign, every local campaign, they're all gonna be different. The culture will really shift depending on what your candidate is like and what kind of people they attract and what the nature of that race is. I've only worked on 2 presidential campaigns so far. It was the Elizabeth Warren primary presidential campaign and then Joe Biden's general election in the fall. So I can only really speak to those 2 experiences. I have lots of friends who worked on Hillary and Obama, and so it is interesting to kind of like compare and contrast. If you guys are interested, I'm happy to have one of those friends come on and talk to me about the differences in our experience. But for this video, I'm just going to talk about those 2 experiences and how prepared I was in some ways and unprepared I was in other ways. So let's just get into it. In May of 2019, I graduated college, and that was right as the primary election was starting to heat up. There was already like 12 candidates, people were starting to pick favorites, and a bunch of my friends were jumping on to presidential campaigns. I decided then that I really wanted to work on a presidential campaign, and that's when I very quickly realized it is almost impossible to do if you don't have really strong connections. That is something that is really important to stress in this video. A lot of campaign culture can be really toxic in terms of the inaccessibility to most Americans. Campaigns will require you to move, sometimes across the country with very little notice. They will not pay you to move at all. You'll have to take care of all of your moving expenses. You'll have to sometimes sign a lease not knowing how long the race is going to go. You might be out of a job in 2 months and now you have this year-long lease in a state that you don't know anyone in. There's definitely a lot of reasons why it's inaccessible, and that's a huge problem with campaign culture that is slowly starting to change a little bit, but the nature of it is that a lot of campaigns, especially the presidential campaigns from this last cycle, are moving really quickly. They're trying to hire up thousands of people across the entire country in a matter of months or weeks even. So a lot of what ends up happening is people hire their friends or people hire friends of friends. So sometimes if you don't know someone on the campaign, they might have a job opening, hire and fill it before you even know that that was a possibility. It is really frustrating. It is a big problem. Some campaigns are doing a better job at fixing it than others. This cycle was definitely a little bit better. There was a lot of organizer positions filled, but when I was first trying, I was applying to all of those. I was barely hearing back from anybody. It was really honestly sad for me that it was so hard to break into the campaign world that I was really interested in, and especially with the candidates I was really passionate about. I just felt so unsure and just didn't know what to do. Because I really struggled to get on one of those races, I ended up taking a job in DC at a different organization. That was a 6-month fellowship, and it ended up being one of the best things that I could have done because luckily at that fellowship, everyone there almost had worked on either Hillary's campaign or Obama's election in 2008 or 2012 or both. So a lot of these people had really strong campaign connections and could talk to me a lot about campaign culture. Because again, it was like that time where everyone was looking to hop onto a race. They were actually really kind, and they sat all of the fellows down to do like this whole Q&A about what working on elections and what working on presidential campaigns is actually like. But that is what really scared me more than anything. I think when we walked in and sat down, they were like, on campaigns, you're going to get paid nothing. You're going to work 7 days a week for like 15 hours a day. You're going to have to move to a random place. It's going to be hard. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be tiring. You can't work out. You can't go to the gym. You can't do your laundry. You can't get groceries. And I was like, this sounds horrible. And at the end, they would be like, but it was the best thing I've ever done and I wouldn't trade it for a second. I was really, really unsure, but I listened to Elizabeth Warren speak a few times that summer, and I just felt this energy and this connection to her that was so different from anything I'd experienced. I had been in politics for a while, but I had never really identified with a candidate in that way and felt so sure and so confident in their vision and even in their flaws. Candidates are just humans and they're not perfect, and it's weird to pretend like your candidate is the most perfect person on earth and they can do no wrong. The ways that she worked to address those issues was another thing that I thought made her the best candidate. So I decided in that summer I was going to do everything it took to get on the Elizabeth Warren campaign. My boss from that fellowship was able to connect me to someone on the Elizabeth Warren campaign for a job that I was really interested in, that again was not posted on the website. Very inaccessible, very privileged, and a big problem, but she was able to connect me to him, and the whole thing moved really quickly. I did like 1 or 2 interviews, and then I got the job, and I was expected to move 2 weeks later. And moving 2 weeks later was honestly, like, that was a lot of time. Usually it's like, get here by this weekend, like, get here tomorrow. I picked up everything I owned in DC, I rented a car, and I drove to Boston again. No clue what to expect, especially from what I had seen on TV and movies. I guess I was picturing an office that was like really fancy and glamorous, and I thought that she was going to be in the office every day and I was going to be best friends with her and that I was going to like know everything about her. Just a few hundred people and everyone was going to have offices and whatever. None of that was the case for the Warren campaign. The nature of this cycle, where there were so many candidates and there was not enough money to go around for everybody. So some of the candidates who started out, like Elizabeth Warren, started out without a ton of name recognition. And so I guess they got this office building before she had really started to fundraise a lot, when she was still really new and early in the race. But the building that the office was in was just a giant warehouse, basically under a highway, 2 giant rooms. Nobody had offices, not even our campaign manager. And so you had like over 300 people just at folding tables, no dividers, no windows, no whatever, just inside. Or there was windows in the front room, but I was in the second room, so there were no windows. And it was just hilarious to me, like the fact that I was sitting directly across from my boss, who worked on Hillary and worked at the DNC and worked on Obama and had all this experience. And he just sat across from me on a plastic folding table, and I was like 22 years old. It was so wild. And our campaign manager, who I really, really love and really still respect so deeply, he also didn't have an office. Like whenever he was around in the office, he was just sitting at a folding table just like the rest of us. That is not the case for other campaigns. I know the Hillary campaign had a beautiful office in Brooklyn, and the Biden campaign had a really nice office in Philadelphia. So a lot of it just depends on how much money your candidate has at certain parts in the race. But our office was not near any food locations either. So the only food options were like one sub shop, shout out Royal Subs, and a gas station. So half of the food that we would get would be from the gas station. Our team, which was 20 of us, ended up getting this big basket of snacks that were just stocked at all times. That was the only thing that I survived on. That and beer and White Claw, because the other thing about campaign culture is because you're working so hard, people definitely like find ways to unwind when they can. If we were working really late, people would start to open up beers and just get pizza and things like that. And it was definitely not the healthiest lifestyle, but it was fun. And that's another thing that I think people are working really hard to change, is not working insane hours and allowing people the time to work out and things like that. We were fortunate enough, there was like a little spin bike studio right by our office that we could go for like an hour and come back to work and keep working if we needed to. So I tried to do that, but in an office of 300 something people, there's always someone's birthday and whatever. So there was just like snacks everywhere. So debate nights are some of my favorite nights on the campaign. They were so much fun. Those were memories that I will just cherish forever. We would have all like 300 of us gather in the kitchen of this space, like again, crammed in on folding tables. And the campaign would get dinner for us, because on debate days, you would get to work whatever time you normally did, like 8 a.m., and you would stay until whenever the debate was over, which was sometimes like 11 p.m., midnight, even like 1 a.m. sometimes if you had to work after the debate. So you were there for a really long time. The campaign would get food for everybody. It would usually be like pizza and sometimes Chipotle or something like that. So you would get all like line up and get food and kind of hang out and talk in whatever time you have before the debate starts. So a lot of people were working, but it was also like watching the debate in a room like that was just like being in Twitter but in real life. Everyone is like in the Slack channels, which is what we use to communicate in DM basically, making the most hilarious jokes. Everyone was just popping off, and whenever she would have a good moment, you would cheer, and it was just such a fun way to have community. There are so many things like that about the campaign. Sometimes it feels a little bit like summer camp because you're just with people so much. One of my best friends from the campaign, who I'm still so close to this day, from the day we started, we sat right next to each other, probably like 7 inches apart, for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week for months. You just get so close to people. The office, even though it was like a giant warehouse, was decorated so cute and so fun, and there was a big mural of her, and there was a wall full of letters from supporters, and there was like a grassroots donor wall for people who had donated to the campaign and their stories. There's posters everywhere. Every team had a meme wall. Whenever something funny would happen, people would either like print it out or write it down or whatever and like tape it up on the wall. So the walls were just covered in memes too. Luckily, we were unionized, so we weren't working 7 days a week for a long time, but then the closer it got to actual primary dates, it just kind of became necessary. So when you're working 7 days a week, really long days, it's Boston, so it gets dark at like 4 p.m. There's no food options near you. It can get sad. Because of that, one day they decided to surprise us with Elizabeth Warren's dog. And Elizabeth Warren has this adorable golden retriever named Bailey. So this man brought Bailey into the office. We all were kind of like, hey, whatever, and just like go for the dog. Everyone's like, I want a picture of the dog. We're like running around with the dog. It's like people treating this dog like it was an A-list celebrity. Like that is how like Looney Tunes we had gotten at that point. People like lined up to take photos with the dog. Like we were not okay. But because of that, like nobody thought about the man who brought him in. We were just like, oh wow, I guess her dog has a handler. That's literally what I thought. I was like, oh wow, that's kind of crazy that she has this one person whose entire job is just to watch her dog. That's so wild. And so we all got our pictures with the dog. This is mine. Absurd things that we were doing. And eventually they leave and they brought us a whole bunch of donuts. We were all just like eating donuts and laughing about like this weird experience with this dog. And then our boss comes in and looks at us and is like, oh, so did you guys talk to Alex? And we were like, who? And he was like, he just came in, like the guy who was just here. And we were like, oh, Bailey, the dog's handler, like Bailey's watcher, Bailey's babysitter. And they were like, no, that was Elizabeth Warren's son. And we were like, we literally ignored him. I don't even think I said hello. I don't think I like acknowledged his presence. Truly acted like this man was not here just so I could like fucking play with this dog. And it turns out he is Elizabeth Warren's son. I felt so bad. Our bosses were like, are you kidding me? None of you acknowledged him. We were like, ah. It was so funny. And seriously still one of like the most embarrassing things that I've done, I think. Another one of my favorite memories from the campaign has to do with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. In the primary, a lot of celebrities picked their favorite candidate and they endorsed them and they would do like events for them and stuff like that. And I felt really lucky that John Legend endorsed Elizabeth Warren. I was so excited. I love him. I love his music. And everyone loved that he was going to the events and like doing all this work for the campaign. It was really nice of him and just a really cool way to see celebrities like interact with politics. But when the campaign ended, the day we found out, everyone was really sad. I mean, you're working so hard, so long for someone who you really deeply believe in with all these friends that you've just made, and you're like loving your life in this new city that you're in, and you just want it to keep going. And to think that somebody who you genuinely believe is like the absolute best pick for the president of the United States is just not going to be the president. And especially for me, when it comes down more to like policy, where there was things that I really strongly believe that we need in this country, especially to reform a lot of the major issues that we have that I felt weren't going to be addressed without her policy. It was really devastating and heartbreaking in a few ways to think that these policy changes that could have a huge impact in someone's life just aren't going to happen, and to think that this person who you so strongly believe in is not going to be there. It was just a devastating day all around. People were crying. It was sad. She like called all of us, and it was really sad. After that, I think to try to cheer us up, there was one man who had been working with John Legend throughout the whole campaign. He was like coordinating the events and like being kind of like his contact between the campaign and John. So this man decides to Slack in the entire Slack channel. This is all like 300 of us in headquarters. And he sends a message saying, John Legend sent us something to the office. And so everyone gets so excited. Everyone's like, oh my God, what did John Legend send us? What is it going to be? Everyone's guessing. Everyone's so excited. And he Slacks again. He's like, it's here. Like, it's at my desk. And so everyone like goes to look so excited. And we get there and all 300 of us look on the desk and there's one single box of 12 donuts. Literally, John Legend sent 300 people one box of 12 donuts. We were crying laughing. It honestly made the entire thing so much better. It was like the only thing that put a smile on so many of our faces, because you know what happened is that John Legend was being really nice and really thoughtful and wanted to send this one man some donuts. Or I don't know, maybe he doesn't think that campaign headquarters have that many people. I don't know what happened, but clearly they were not intended for 300 people. And when all of us were like crowded around this person's desk being like, what? It was just so funny. Once the campaign ended, it was the same week that COVID started. So people, have leases that they have to get out of. People are now unemployed. People have to figure out where they're going to live, what they're going to do. I think 1 week after she dropped out, Tom Hanks got it and the NBA shut down, and it was like, okay, this is actually really real and I need to figure out somewhere to be. I decided to go back to Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I'm from. I took a job for the Democratic National Convention Committee, which puts on the convention that actually nominates Joe Biden. This year, it was like a 4-day digital event. It had musical performances, all of that. If you want me to make a video talking more about that experience and being on the digital team there and the work I did, happy to do that later. Just let me know in the comments. After that ended, I quickly joined the Biden team. The Biden team was definitely a totally different experience from the Warren campaign for a million reasons. I think one of the big reasons, obviously, is that with the Biden campaign, it was the general election. So you had people coming from all different campaigns. There were people from Bernie, people from Warren, people from Pete, Yang, everybody, because they have to staff up so much so quickly. A lot of people already knew each other, which I think was actually really nice, especially in Zoom campaign world, because it was totally different. There's a lot of pros and cons, I think, to the fact that the Biden campaign was virtual. One of the major obvious pros is that it makes it so much more accessible. I personally don't think I would have done the Biden campaign had I had to move to Philadelphia. And so because I didn't, and I was able to work from LA, and a lot of people were able to work from where they were, a lot more people were able to apply and be a part of it. Anytime that campaigns can become more accessible to anyone who wants to join them instead of just people who are already connected in the political world, I think that's a great thing. So that was one really nice element of it. The other really nice element of the Biden campaign was that because it was virtual, you were still able to feel like a human a little bit. We were still working 7 days a week, definitely still some really long hours, but we were able to get groceries and do our laundry and maybe do a workout and stuff like that because you're already at home, and that was really made a big difference to me. On the Warren campaign, again, it was an amazing experience I would not trade in for the world. I met the coolest people, did the most amazing things, learned so much about myself and what I believe in and all these things. But it was really hard sometimes. It was really stressful to be how am I going to be able to get groceries? When am I going to do my laundry? I can't make my bed. Your life just kind of feels a little bit in chaos. So it was kind of nice to have that at the Biden campaign. But you do miss out on those opportunities where you don't have those silly moments with your coworkers at 11 p.m. laying on the floor, rolling around and whatever. When you're virtual, you just don't. And so that's a little bit of a bummer, but there's definitely still always so many amazing memories that I have from that campaign and amazing friends that I made both virtually and in real life from working there that I again would not trade for the world. But one of my favorite memories from the Biden campaign actually, again, has to do with John Legend and Chrissy Teigen for some reason, because they're really involved in politics, which is awesome. But so on campaigns, most of the time that you hear directly from your candidate is on a monthly all-staff call. So campaigns have literally thousands of employees across the entire country, all in different cities and states and doing different things. So they're really massive corporations kind of. And so it's really rare that obviously all of you are on one call or in one space, except for these all staff calls. The all staff calls a lot of times where the candidate will say stuff to like pump you up and get the team going and like say something really encouraging or let you know some news or highlight some people's work and stuff like that. And also, if you're lucky, that's where a surrogate might join. And surrogates are usually people who like speak on behalf of the campaign, and they're usually like celebrities or people like athletes, people like that. On the Biden campaign, we had quite a few cool surrogates pop into our calls. We had Obama pop into a few, which was really amazing. Kamala and Joe called in often, Jill called in often, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom called in once, Cher called in once. Like, really cool to just see people wanting to, you know, talk to people who are trying to make a difference in their communities, and to see what celebrities are going to like dedicate their time in that way is just really nice. And so usually, as you can imagine, these are calls with like 5,000 people on them. And if you've ever been on a Zoom call ever, you know that that is a recipe for disaster, especially when there are like cool people on the other line. So usually what will happen is that they'll have some setting where they like lock everyone on mute and like nobody can unmute themselves while somebody is talking, because you have like 5,000 people. Like, it can get crazy. This one day, for some reason, it didn't work. John Legend and Chrissy Teigen called into our all staff call, and they were on Zoom, and it was like near Halloween, and so Chrissy was in this like swan costume, and like before they could even say anything, they had just started to like open their mouths. Everyone lost their damn minds. Everyone somehow unmuted, and I kid you not, screamed into their microphone. Like, no talking, no hi Chris, no, just screams at the top of their lungs. And John Legend and Chrissy Teigen sat there like this, as people just screamed at them for like multiple minutes. And the poor moderator is like trying to get everything under control, is like trying to like frantically mute people, and everyone's like unmuting themselves again and just screaming and like going so hard and so crazy. We all got on Twitter being like, stop embarrassing us. It was hilarious. Like, I have never felt so embarrassed in front of a celebrity. That was another one of my favorite memories. But again, there's so many, and there's really like way too much to talk about in campaign world to just fit into one video. So I'm sure I'll make another one. If you guys have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the comments below. I know that campaign world can definitely be really difficult to break into. I will say that once you get onto one race, I feel like the community that you make, the people that you meet, the things you learn about yourself and your values, it really is all worth it, especially or only if the candidate is someone who you really strongly believe in. That makes a world of difference. It kind of makes all of those negatives so worth it. And I think that there are some toxic elements to campaign culture, like with work-life balance, obviously, with low pay, and those things are definitely slowly improving, but we need to make sure that we are encouraging campaigns to unionize and really putting pressure on them to make sure that they are taking care of their staff. It's also definitely time for campaigns to become more accessible to people who don't have those kinds of connections. I think that that's a huge issue, especially in racial equity and inclusion. It ends up being a lot of white people hiring their friends and hiring people that they know, which is another huge issue that I really hope that remote campaign work has kind of shed a light on, how we can erase a lot of those barriers. We can still obviously win elections completely remotely. So I think that that is something I hope to see come from campaign world. But again, amazing community, such a family, such amazing memories. It's hard to do too many campaigns in a row, so don't do that to yourself and get burnt out too quickly. Take the space you need away from campaigns and then come back when it's the right person and the right time. And again, once you join one campaign, all those people will go in so many different directions that now you'll have access to a really wide network. When I'm looking for a new job, one of my first thoughts is like, oh, well, is somebody from Warren at that organization, or somebody from Biden? Or if they're not, I'm sure somebody from one of those organizations will know somebody else who is. So it can be really helpful career-wise, and I really don't want to undersell that, even though it is, again, hard to break into. So let me know what other questions you have about campaign life in the comments below, or any other videos you want to see. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.